Thank you. I'm very happy to be speaking here. As was mentioned, I'm a professor in Helsinki and also a visiting professor in Oxford, but I also go very often to teach children at schools, 4-year-olds, 8-year-olds and 11-year-olds. And actually, that's one of the most interesting moments I have. The questions and the imagination, the dreams that they have are usually much more interesting than the comments I hear at universities. For example, one 8-year-old boy asked from his mother this question that had clearly bothered him for a long time, that what do I then do if in the future I happen to meet the woman of my life walking on the street? Should I shout, stop? And I think that was a good question. I haven't tried this strategy personally, but I can visualize it like that. Which part you did not understand? There are only 4 letters in that word. A few weeks ago we were in Vienna talking to 12-year-old kids about the world they want to see, and one of them asked this question, that what would the world be like without dignity? And then he thought about it himself for a while and answered, the world would become a huge cemetery. And I think that the starting point is that not caring about environment is like stealing from these children. It's like stealing from your own child. And what I'm calling for is a broader goal for our leadership, kind of the world's development. And last year at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the forum chose dignity-based leadership as the topic of its closing ceremony, and Klaus Schwab asked me to speak, and it was leaders from Fortune 500 companies, leaders of countries, and what I tried to formulate was a larger vision for development. As we are leaders, the real question is, where are we finally leading this planet? So what is our version of the Martin Luther King phrase, I have a dream that? And I was kind of offering this phrase that I have a dream that we live in a world where every human being has a right to lead a dignified life, including the right to clean environment. And we got very high-level supporters for this dignity-based leadership from Nobel Prize winners like Desmond Tutu to the economist Joseph Stiglitz, then UN peace messengers like Michael Douglas and Muhammad Ali, from the business world, Michael Porter, from different parts of the world, Queen Rania and Peter Gabriel and so on. The question we wanted to pose in that session with the world's leaders was that, what is the larger vision that you want to stand for? I mean, what is the legacy that you want to leave after you? And like we know, and Dr. Pachauri made it very clear, we only have this one planet. It's not like we have 5 planets to choose from. We only have this one planet, and we need to solve these issues. My own way of expressing what are the key challenges and what are the key elements for possible solutions would be the following. I'll now shift, if you can change the screen. Can you please, thanks. Okay. So at the World Economic Forum, we also have this future analysis group called the 2030 group, which is a group of people from different fields and different parts of the world, from the founders of Google to more traditional industry, including many key actors in the transportation sector. And we've made a huge analysis of the world's key developments, and I've tried to sum up the most fundamental challenges based on this very big work to 3 biggest challenges. And I've expressed them with words starting with a C. Clean, first of all, the challenge of environment and energy. In fact, if you don't solve this one, the others don't matter so much. Care, we have the world issue of global poverty. We have the challenge of welfare society version 2.0, and this is also interlinked with environment. Poverty and environment are linked together. And then we have a cultural big challenge from multicultural coexistence between different religions and values, and the major communication technology transformation. And I've used this kind of expression for fundamental challenges, F equals C cube, because knowing how the book sales of Dr. Pachauri are rising now, I had to come up with something as a countermeasure, a kind of at least a quasi-mathematical law of expressing the situation. So I used this F equals C cube to summarize the 3 biggest challenges based on this WEF 2030 work. But we also have a possibility of finding solutions based on innovation, and this is the field I've written on most in my research, and I'd like to express also briefly, based on that research and the future work in Davos, that what is characterizing the best innovation across different fields in the world. And I choose as an example innovation information technology, because that's also part of the thing that we need to solve transportation sector problems. We need cooperation here. But we also need to be empirically based on how the development is really driven. And location is actually an important part of leading centers of innovation. And I show it with 2 sets of maps. The first one is on the content production of Internet itself, because about the Internet we hear most often that we are now transcending the limits of time and place completely. But with Castells and Matthew Chook, we made an analysis of Internet content production, and it turns out that it doesn't completely transcend the limits of time and place. It's a more complex logic. Even if you can't see the details, the bigger the black dots are, the more there is content production. And it actually turns out that one country, United States, alone produces 50% of the world's internet content, even if it's only 5% of the world's population. But it gets even more interesting when you get inside of these countries, like the United States. It turns out that we don't still transcend the limit of time and space, but 5 leading cities produce almost half of the US internet content. In fact, to be exact, the 5 leading cities, New York, Silicon Valley area, Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, produce almost 20% of the whole world's internet content. And it gets almost absurd when you go inside of these leading centers like New York. Still you don't totally transcend the limits of time and place with information technology. But it turns out that most of the internet content is produced on Manhattan, in fact in a few blocks south and east of Central Park. So if you ask where is the internet located, now you can see the answer. But the more important question is, why is even internet located somewhere? And the answer is that you need 3 things together to succeed in innovation competition. First, you need creative people, which is based on high-quality education, and this is not available anywhere. Secondly, you need what I call the community of enrichment, all the producer-manager structures helping to turn ideas into actual business. meaning financing, but also how the public sector finances, for example, R&D is very critical. And thirdly, you need a wider culture of creativity that entices the best people to use their creative potential in these fields. Another set of maps shows the same logic. Here's the world economy against the thesis that world is flat. With Florida and Kulden, they produced these maps of the world economy, and actually the world is not flat, but the world is spiky. It is driven by a number of leading centers, for example, the east coast of the US, California, European centers. The rise of China is very much the rise of the Chinese east coast. And these are centered around the leading centers of innovation. Here's the map of innovation centers in the world based on patents. Again, the East Coast in the US, California, some European centers, and Asia rising very fast. And ultimately, these are mostly around leading universities like the East Coast in the US, Harvard, MIT, Yale, Princeton, California, Silicon Valley around Stanford and Berkeley, Oxford, Cambridge, the Greater London area in the UK as examples. And again, the reason is that you need three things together to succeed: creative people based on high quality education, community of enrichment, including both private and public investment in turning ideas into results, and a wider culture of creativity. And that's what I also sum up as a principle of flourishing centers of innovation, F equals C cubed. Creative people, community of enrichment, culture of creativity. And what I'm here calling for is that we now need a Silicon Valley of clean transportation in Europe and in elsewhere. We need a Silicon Valley of clean energy, a Silicon Valley of clean technology. And this we must see as a huge opportunity instead of a business problem. I see this as a competitiveness issue. When I was advising the technology industry and some other governments in different countries, they get the point that it's now becoming a competitiveness issue to be ahead of others in environmental issues. You have to be ready for the future. There's a major shift in values. If you want to attract the best talent, it's looking for places that reflect their values, and environment must be part of that. Secondly, customers are changing their attitudes. So the question is now, which country is seen as a leader in the development? Which companies are seen as leaders in the development, if you want to attract the best people to work with you? I think the math here is very simple. Climate change is a scientific fact, so within a few years everyone will have to adapt to it. The only question is, are you going to be the person that joins last, or are you going to make this your competitiveness advantage? So are you going to be the person that goes to history as the person who didn't care, or are you going to be remembered as the person who drove this change? So basically, do you see this as a business problem or a business opportunity? I think we need to make capitalism work for the environment. Let's say, for example, that in a few years, your competitor says that their product can now consume 20% less of energy than yours, and the price of oil is above $200. What happens to you if you didn't act even with the strong messages coming for years before that? Another way of asking it is a political question. There are 200 leaders in the world. How many of us can list even 10 of them by name? I mean, really. Who can list the leading businessmen in Europe in the 12th century? Who were the richest people in Europe in the 12th century? Who are the leaders that people really remember? they are leaders with a larger vision. I think they are leaders with a more dignity-based vision for the world where they want us to lead to. It's a familiar list with Mohandas Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, some others. And I think that actions are what we need now. We don't need more speaking about these topics. But actions can be also very strong symbolically. We also need to see these actions as good symbolic actions. For example, an example from a different field. Ireland cut its taxation in cultural field to 0%. Immediately, creative people started to think that Ireland is an interesting place to go to. California announced that even if the US isn't joining the Kyoto, it's going to cut the CO2 emission. Now it's one of the leading centers and attractive places of innovators in energy and environment. Or even the mayor of San Francisco banned plastic bags. It was a strong symbolic act. So we need to make our company, our country attractive in this competition over talent and customers. And in doing that, we also make environmental issues not a problem, business problem, but an opportunity, and we make it kind of sexy to be environment friendly and unsexy to not be it. My friend says that when we reach the point that it has a sexy image to make love in a hybrid car, then we've gotten to the point. And when it's a turn off to drive an SUV, then we are there. Leadership, we are actually very lucky. We have so many resources. When I think about leadership, what really started our Dignity Initiative was a meeting of an 18-year-old woman in Africa with Crown Prince Haakon from Norway. We met with this 18-year-old woman who changed our way of thinking about what is possible and what is real leadership. This is the woman. She had contracted AIDS. She couldn't afford the medicine. She knew she was past the point where anything could be done. She knew that she would die within a few months. So she had every reason in the world to become embittered and to start taking revenge on the world. But instead, she chose not to. She chose to start teaching others in the village how to avoid her fate. And Crown Prince Haakon said that people call me leader. They said that I am a leader. But this 18-year-old girl was a real leader. She didn't give up. She lived for something larger than herself. And if she could do that with so little resources that she had, what can we not do with all the resources that we have available in terms of economy and innovation and talent? So I don't buy the argument that we can't do this. Yesterday at the Bach concert in the church, I was thinking that don't come to tell me that we can't solve this. I mean, look at what we've already had, for example, in Europe. We've had Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. We've had Bach and Mozart and Beethoven. We've had Newton, Darwin and Einstein. If we can't solve with this tradition these problems, that's almost an achievement in itself to fail with this kind of a history. I think we need to commit to this larger vision in the spirit of not giving up and in the spirit of belief in innovation that you ain't seen nothing yet. That's what the spirit I believe in. And I leave you with 3 questions that are very famous in the history of philosophy for thinking about leadership. If I don't stand for myself, who will? If I stand only for myself, who am I? If not now, when? Thank you for your attention.